I've got a real soft spot for anime love stories. From classics like Toradora to trash like Love Hina, there are few romance-centric anime that I won't at least give a shot. At first, if I'm being perfectly honest, I got into those stories out of a simple desire to escape my own teenage loneliness, but as I've grown up, I've come to appreciate the way the genre allows us to explore characters and their relationships with greater depth and subtlety than is allowed by your typical shonen battle fracas. But, of course, the genre doesn't guarantee good writing. For every his and her circumstances, you got 20 Maburahos or Wolf Girl and Black Princes, and even among the good and great ones, you'll start to notice some, shall we say, similarities, repetitions in themes, setting, plot lines, and sometimes the story structure of entire shows. Anime that explore human relationships are a dime a dozen, a penny a dozen if you count romantic subplots in other genres, but most of them tend to focus on just one period in the development of those relationships, that is, the beginning. Most romance anime, and love stories in general, are all about the chase. In Hero's Journey terms, the meet cute is the call to action, the pursuit of romance creates the trials and tribulations of the journey, and the end goal of relationshipness is the elixir that the hero seeks. And in a sense, this is fine. Chasing the guy or girl of your dreams can feel like a big adventure, and it can be a story worth telling. But there are two big problems with it. The first is that it's kinda limiting. By choosing to tell this kind of story, you end up inevitably following a very time-worn structure without much room for variation. It goes more or less like this. Boy meets girl, then some mix of the following happens. Either one falls for the other one, they fall for each other but don't tell each other, one of them already has feelings for someone else, or they don't like each other at all and fall in love later. They're kept apart by a series of increasingly severe and absurd misunderstandings caused by miscommunication or the machinations of romantic rivals, until eventually they both figure out their feelings and get together, or maybe they don't if it's trying to be subversive. There's a lot that you can do to keep that formula feeling fresh, but there's only so much ground you can really cover with it. It only really allows you to talk about how people meet and form initial connections, and maybe how friendly or antagonistic relationships can change over time into something more. It kind of ignores the whole lifetime of experience that comes after two people decide that they will officially and maybe exclusively have sex on the regs. And that's the second bigger problem. A lot of these stories present a relationship as a state that you attain as part of your happily ever after, which is something that just doesn't exist in real life. Good relationships are built up over years with hard work, communication, and loyalty, and there's a lot of interesting stories that can come out of that process. Stories that we rarely get to see on screen because it's kinda hard to fit them into the standard hero wants thing, hero pursues thing, hero learns important lesson and maybe gets thing if it's really what's best for them story structure that dominates most media. But those stories are still interesting. They're still a huge part of the experience of romance, and they're still something that a lot of people could use guidance in navigating themselves, which is a big part of what makes Wotakoi, my third favorite show of spring 2018, feel like such a breath of fresh air. It's not about two people on a glacial collision course with their romantic destiny. It's about two friends with common interests who decide to try dating and then gradually fall in love with each other over the course of their relationship. And it's also about the dysfunctional but loving existing relationship between their two co-workers. There's a lot of nerdy references tossed in on top to draw in the otaku crowd, and to some extent the show is explicitly about otakus dating, but while the title is Love is Hard for an Otaku, the underlying theme is really that love is just generally hard for, people. It's just a little bit harder for otaku when they try to cover up their nerdy nature in day-to-day life. Our protagonists, Narumi and Hirotaka, definitely have otaku problems, but their real issues come from trying to read each other's minds instead of being open about how they're feeling, from wallowing in their own deep-rooted insecurities, the kinds of real issues that plague most early relationships, and a lot of the series' conflicts come from them learning to navigate those pitfalls, where in a typical romance anime, a dramatic confrontation might come from, say, the shy girl protagonist thinking that her popular boy crush is secretly dating her best friend because she saw him holding her hand while he was taking her to the nurse's office, and she's incapable of asking her friends basic questions about context. Here it arises because of things like Narumi worrying that Hirotaka is just settling for her when he prefers girls with bigger boobs, and being afraid to say that because she doesn't really want to know the answer. The kind of real self-inflicted self-inflicted problems that actual human beings have. And with that down-to-earth drama comes down-to-earth dialogue that is honestly some of the most authentic that I've heard in anime. Not just because A1 Pictures paid the money to actually be able to refer to real anime, manga, and video games, including Nintendo stuff, by name, but because the characters just talk casually about things that interest them and what's going on in their lives. They dance around their real worries, probe each other with questions that have double meaning, argue very earnestly about a lot of pointless bullshit, and use jokes to cover up their real feelings. There's not much here in the way of poetic shoujo manga proclamations, but there is a lot in the way of nerds being nerds and people being people, and that makes those rare, heartfelt, open moments feel really special, just like they do in real life. It's not just refreshing to see this kind of thing in anime, though, it's also genuinely helpful. Shoujo manga, and especially male-oriented romance anime, can create a lot of unrealistic expectations for what love is like. I know they fucked me up when I was young. Seeing fictional people worry about the same shit that you actually worry about day to day and getting through it can be reassuring and can help you figure out what you actually need to change about your own approach to life. It's especially helpful when other parts of those characters' daily lives also line up with yours. If you're working day to day, it can be a bit hard to relate to some horny high schoolers in a lovey-dovey fantasy land, but it's easy to connect with other adults doing the 9-to-5 grind. That's part of what makes Agretsuko so special, and while it's a different kind of show, that's what makes Wotakoi shine as well. It's a really good thing that Wotakoi isn't set in high school or even college, both because the high school setting is overplayed as fuck, and because the fact that only 2% of marriages are between high school sweethearts and they have a higher divorce rate all but guarantees that Ryuji and Taiga are doomed. Not to rain on your pure parade or anything like that. Although the silver lining to that is that all of those losing harem members in every anime you've ever seen still have their shot down the line. So don't give up on your nonsense ships, Tumblr. Not that you need me to tell you that. How the fuck is Zutara still a thing? Funnily enough, Kabakura and Koyanagi are actually two high school sweethearts who beat those odds, and they demonstrate both why so many of those early relationships fail and what it takes to make them work. They're acutely aware of all of each other's foibles, they're not perfectly compatible, and they easily get on each other's nerves, but they understand each other intimately and they communicate what they're feeling and what's bugging them, even if it takes a bit of prodding to coax out the heavy stuff. That kind of thing requires emotional maturity that most high school kids obviously lack. And in general, I think that adults just make for more interesting romantic leads, both because they have experience under their belts that kids simply haven't had the opportunity to get yet, including sometimes romantic experience, and because their lives are complicated in ways that just don't affect somebody who's living on a high school schedule. Life is so different for people working on their careers than it is for students, even college students who are at most holding down part-time jobs. Trying to get along with your coworkers, keep up appearances, make deadlines, and just get through the workday can put a lot of strain on both you and your partner. Your plans can be interrupted by a new assignment or a schedule change, and if you're not dating a coworker, your schedules can be wildly different. On the other hand, if you are dating a coworker, that can, well, it can get really messy. And life in general gets messy once you're out on your own and steering your own ship. And bringing someone else aboard complicates that. Again, there is a lot of fodder for great stories and conflicts, both romantic and otherwise, buried in these essential parts of everyday modern life. But hell if you'd know it from watching most anime. You can practically count on two hands the number of shows about real working adults, and you can bring that down to one hand if you don't count more fantastical careers like the space janitors of Planetes or period pieces like Rakugo Shinju. And maybe that's because the average otaku just watches anime to escape the daily drudgery of their modern life. Maybe my perspective's a bit skewed because I don't have a normal job, but I still find a lot of catharsis and value in the parts of shows like Wotakoi that do accurately reflect parts of my own life and experience. And I think think that value is something that anime in general isn't doing the best job of tapping into. But Wotakoi, Agretzko, and other slice of work life shows in their vein demonstrate how powerful and fulfilling stories like that can be, at least if they're executed well, and how refreshing they can feel next to the season's 50th show about teenagers. And I hope that the successes of these shows, and titles like Shirobako before them, encourage other anime producers to take chances on other properties in that vein, because anime, especially anime romance, could benefit from a little bit more maturity. And I mean that in every sense of the word. There are a lot of potentially great love stories out there waiting to be told and waiting for us to fall in love with them. Speaking of, well, actually I don't have a segue for this, but I'm gonna be a guest at Anime Expo in LA this coming Independence Day weekend from July 5th to the 8th. There's a lot going on there, and I'm gonna be around the convention hall doing stuff all weekend, but if you wanna make sure that you catch me, you should come to my panel in room 404, that's live programming 5, on Sunday the 8th at 12:30 p.m. In that hour, I'm gonna be doing a live analysis of the brand new My Hero Academia opening, which should be out by then, as well as a Q&A about the channel and anything else you guys might want to ask me about. And since AX is the place to go for live premieres, we're gonna cap things off with a sneak peek at an upcoming Mother's Basement video. Once again, that's happening Sunday the 8th from 12:30 to 1:30 in live programming room 5. If you're at AX, you're not gonna want to miss it. But if you're not at AX, you do have some other chances to catch me this summer. East Coast fans can catch me and Tenlade as guests at Otakuthon in Montreal, Canada from August 3rd to the 5th, and I'll be back on the West Coast for Crunchyroll Expo in San Jose, California from September 1st to the 3rd. If all of those are a little too far afield for you to reach, there is always next year, and there's always other conventions. I love traveling to events, seeing new places, and meeting new people, so if there's a con near you that you'd like to see me at, tell the organizers that you want them to invite me, and if they get back to me, I'll do my best to make it happen. I'm Geoff Thew, professional shitbag, signing out from my mother's basement.